Welcome to the CFMU 93.3 FM radio show and podcast, The Coolest Journey, where my guests and I explore the intersections of health and environment through reflections, tips, and tools for everyday living so we can all improve our lives. I'm your host, Hélène Caron. Let me ask you a few personal questions to start. How do you handle stress in your life, either from external or internal sources? How about emotional and physical trauma? Talk therapy works for many people, but not for everyone. Having suffered a major concussion in February 2014 due to a car accident and a more recent one in June this year, talk therapy doesn't work well for me, as among other symptoms, I struggle to remember the right words at the right time, a commonality amongst brain injured patients. My guest today offers a different kind of therapy, one that focuses on sensations and rewiring the nervous system. Dr. Nur Shah is a trained psychiatrist who has opened her own consulting practice in Vancouver, BC, and has years of experience blending her special expertise with patients young and old for stress, trauma, and many other aspects of mental health. She will be sharing her coolest journey into this work of hers and also provide us with some examples of what she does. If you think this could be a woo woo show or podcast, I challenge you to listen to the show and try some of the exercises that Dr. Noor will be sharing with us. This is a potentially life changing chat. Without further ado, welcome, Dr. Noor.
Hello, hello. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. And full disclosure, we started to do therapy together about 2 months ago, I think, because my pain doctor from the pain clinic had told me that I needed to get a counselor. And that's when I can't believe I found you, but that's through a mutual friend. And it's been life changing for me. And this is why I absolutely wanted to have you on the podcast, because if it worked for me, and I know it's worked for many, many of your patients, I think it would really benefit a lot of people to hear what you offer in terms of counseling and therapy. And especially for people like me who have some type of brain injury and who's working with let's just say multiple physical issues and trauma to the body. It's just, one concussion after another, or broken bones or whatever happens. And it works. What you offer works. So I'm so thrilled to have you here. Thank you once again. Before we actually talk about what you do in terms of your work, I'd love for you to explain how you got there in the first place. How did this coolest journey start for you?
Well, I entered medicine believing that I wanted to be helpful to people, and I wanted to be a part of their healing. And so I went into pediatrics first, uh, did a 3-year residency, and in that process, started to see chronically ill children, but there was no emotional, psychological processes that were helpful to them in terms of the traumatic experiences that they were having through the illness process. And so I became interested in that and switched. So I switched into child and adolescent psychiatry residency, and in that process, it was very pharmacologically, so it was all about the drugs and diagnoses. And even though I learned a little bit about neurodevelopmental processes, it just was not, again, about anything to do with neuroplasticity, especially in developing minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I actually, through that process, I thought, okay, I realized that in some of the training we were meeting certain parents and kids, and I was having reactions to what was going on, and I thought, I better figure this out. So I did a little bit of therapy myself, and chair therapy, and that led me to an understanding a little bit of the unconscious mind. And then from there, I started to go to talks that would present about attachment theory, trauma, and affect dysregulation. And then I started to do reading, and there were two books that I found helpful in terms of really looking at neuroplasticity, and they were both written by a fellow by the name of Norman Deutsch.
Oh my goodness. I was going to ask you if he informed your work. So just to add some context, I think it was 2 years after I had my car accident that I found out about Dr. Norman Deutsch's work. And it was thanks to him that I found hope on how to get better. So, oh my God, I've got tears in my eyes just thinking about it. So, okay, so you've got that. Wow, this is good. Didn't expect
Yeah.
this. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep on,
No,
because I
no,
was going
that's
to ask you if he was okay. This is great. Keep going, keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah. So, and reading through those, all those chapters, and really recognizing, how much neuroplasticity occurs in us, and how little uh, we're really trained in that process, right? Really helping people understand that they can develop new neural circuits, and then they can change how they experience their environment, right? How
Mm-hmm.
they will respond to their environment. And then I also read some of Peter Levine's work in
Before, sorry,
trauma.
before you move on, I just want to also add, it doesn't matter how old we are for this
No,
neuroplasticity to happen,
no,
and this is what part of Norman Deutsch's research. Doesn't matter how old we are, and it doesn't matter when the trauma actually happened, even if it was 20 years afterwards, the neuroplasticity can still take place, which was
absolutely.
it was a key part in my journey as well. So I'm sure some listeners are probably they thinking, well, maybe I need therapy only as soon as it happens, but in fact, it's never too late, basically.
Right. And it really isn't. And so then yeah, Peter Levine, there were a number of Dan Siegel, the Mindful Brain,
How
and
about
there were a number of, go ahead.
Dr. Gabor Mate from Vancouver?
Yeah, I read some of his, but I found more interest in, say, like, the polyvagal,
Mm.
Porges work, and so anyway,
Different,
I was looking at
yeah,
all
it's a
those layers.
different
Yep,
approach.
yep,
Yes, yes, yes.
yes, indeed. And so, however, and I did training in CBT, DBT, psychodynamic psychotherapy, but there was always something missing in terms of being able to fully heal someone through certain experiences. And so I was fortunate and very blessed to meet uh, the founders, and there's two people, two brilliant psychologists, Dr. Lynn Zettel and Dr. Ed Josephs, who developed the process of SRT, self-regulation therapy. And it was through that training that I began to understand the deeper physiology of what happens when, for example, we have a motor vehicle accident, or when we've had a traumatic, we've had a fall. I never thought falls were traumatic, but they can be. And then
Mm-hmm.
how that gets layered in the autonomic nervous system. So it was really through that training that just opened up the door for me to really work on and helping people through the physiology of dysregulation, right? And so really, in terms of in case people want to know self-regulation, dysregulation. So self-regulation is really the innate capacity that we actually share with animals, but it's the innate capacity in our autonomic nervous system to be faced in a flexible way, to be faced with a new experience, or sometimes a threat, so a novel experience, a threat, and be able to return back to a homeostatic physiologic state. And actually, there's a really interesting book. And he's also a neuroscientist, but he's also a zoologist, and it's Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. That's a really good book
That's a good title.
because it tells, yeah, because what happens is that we tend to, in moments that we've had, something shocking happen to us, right? Like a fall, a sudden fall. Um, we tend to ignore whatever the autonomic nervous system has just experienced because we'll be a bit shaky. We stand up, and we're a bit shaky. There's all of this physiology that occurs, and then we override it with all our high order thinking, and away we go. And depending on how much dysregulation is already in the system, that sometimes can be the trigger to unfold panic attacks, more significant, experiences. So, so that's a good book. Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and
So,
it's funny. He's a funny guy. Yeah,
oh, we like. I
yeah,
like it. I like it. I shouldn't say we, but I love
yeah,
that kind of writing. So
yeah,
basically, what if I'm coming back to what you're saying, right? In the case of my car accident, it wasn't the first time that I was hitting my head. I think I had something like 6 or 7 concussions in the span of 7 or 8 years, and that was the one that did me in.
yeah,
Followed years and years and years and a lot of money in rehabilitation as well. So basically, I had a number of these events
yeah.
accumulated. Some like it's the extra drop of water that makes the whole glass
Yes,
overflow.
that's
Now,
right.
for some people, it might be something different. It could be an emotional stress that
Absolutely.
accumulates, and then it
Yeah,
just overflows. And then there's
yeah,
either, like you said, panic attack or just complete body shutdown. Like the body starts to talk because the emotions are. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is we've got these layers that are building, but not necessarily one on top of the other. They're kind of meshed into one another like a big spider web. And sometimes we pull on one and the whole thing comes together as opposed to peeling it off like an onion. And that's kind of what
right.
you address, right? With all of the
Yes,
tools that
yes,
you
that's
have.
true. Right. And so also, if you can kind of consider that trauma isn't the experience of trauma, the dysregulation that occurs in the autonomic nervous system, um, is not, it's not about the event. It's about what happens in the nervous system. So two dissimilar events, if the physiology, right, if again the autonomic, it's not very specific in how it reacts, right? So if it has a similar physiology, they get hooked together. So it's not like, oh, only a fall and a fall and a fall. No, no, no. Just like you were saying, the autonomic nervous system doesn't know the difference. It hasn't got the intellectual process. It just knows that there was a threat, right? A moment of catching your breath. You couldn't breathe properly. Your blood pressure switched, right? Your diaphragm didn't, right? And so a shock in the experience, your body tensed up to brace for whatever it was, and then it gets held. And
Mhm.
so, that's really what happens. And so in SRT process, what we're looking at is we're going to go into the nervous system in small increments. We're not going to over traumatize. So a lot of people in talk therapy will talk about the full event. Okay, so in my approach that I learned from SRT was that that's re-traumatizing. Even
Mhm.
though we don't think so, as soon as we start to even remember something that was threatening, if we are able to check into our body, if we're aware of our body sensations, we'll start to notice. We'll notice tension, we'll notice tightening. There'll be a number of sensations that start to happen, and all we're doing is talking about it. So, so that's why the talking about it, in essence, right, overwhelms the system again. So being able to track sensations in small, very graded sort of small increments. And then what we try to do is we try to interrupt the pattern, because a pattern develops in time in response to a particular, you want to call them triggers, or a particular experience. And then there's a pattern that evolves. And so it's a gradual shifting. And in that process, what we're doing is we're engaging neuroplasticity. We're allowing for a new circuit to start to develop. Some of those, right, those neurons are now, but we're doing it in a small way so that we're not going back into the shock, and we're going into a regulated. So part of it is finding a regulated state. And what I mean by that is where we're going more into our ventral vagus, which means that we're going into a calmer, maybe a calmer memory, or maybe an activity that we love to do. And we're able to bring that awareness to our nervous system, to ourself, where oh, as soon as I feel the sun on my face, oh, that nice warmth. And as soon as we go there, we start to settle. The system, the physiology starts to settle. That's what we do. We go back and forth titrating.
Mhm. And we
And that's
talked
really what, yeah, yeah,
we
go
I
ahead.
was gonna say we talked about this in one of my own sessions with you, where this, oh my goodness, I'll already forget the word that you used, but basically this situation that we put ourselves in to find that calm is also one that is safe for us,
Yes.
so that that's where the body can heal when it feels that safe environment. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. So, again, right, the process of trauma and dysregulation is where there's a loss, right? So what happens is when we're dysregulated and when we've experienced trauma, there is a loss of safety. There's a loss of self-cohesion. There's a loss of space and time orientation. There's a loss of control, right? And so, and people will describe they're helpless. There's no choice, there's no option. They, and so what happens is we tend to then we tend to basically, instead of expand, we contract. We limit our interactions. We don't go out with we don't try certain things. We avoid whatever it is that has threatened us. And we get into all of these patterns that are um and so, but it's really about safety and trust, actually, right?
mm,
Because those come all together. And again, if we've had neglect or developmental emotional physical trauma, abuse, where we've experienced abuse, and that again is a very sensitive process of, I don't expect right away somebody to trust me, even though I am trustworthy, but their nervous system has not had that experience as another individual being trustworthy. And so when I had my office, I was able often to tell, when, even though I don't know the person's history, I would, encourage them to come into the office, and I'd have like a couch, I'd have a big chair, but I had a chair also that faced the door, where they could see the door quickly. And the people that often wanted to choose that seat, without me knowing anything about their history, I knew already that developmentally there had been something unsafe, so that they're looking for an exit sign. They're
mhm.
looking for the exit just in case. And
Yeah,
and so
and
yes,
maybe
absolutely.
being on edge as well to make sure that they
Absolutely.
know if someone is coming in unexpectedly behind them.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
high startle
Mhm.
response. I had somebody else, when the clicking of the heat, the heat kept going on and off, and that person would just, and so I had to change things around. And I luckily I had a little fireplace, that electric fireplace that could blow some heat. So before that person came in, I would turn the heating mechanisms off, because I didn't need to add to that startle. And again, recognizing that person, telling me about it, me adjusting it. So again, we'll create a little bit more safety, a little bit more trust,
Right,
you
right.
know?
And
And
and I'm thinking about the various patients, for example, who choose that chair facing the door. In some cases, it could be other patients who get flooded easily by things like light, sound,
yes,
motion,
yes, yes,
temperature changes. Their
yes,
bodies are so much in overdrive, that that sympathetic
yes,
system is such in overdrive that any little thing like even the sound of a little clock, it'll set them
yes,
off, or like you said, the
absolutely,
tick of that heater, right? So it's really
yes.
important for health providers to be aware of this, which I don't know how many times, Dr. Noor, I've walked into doctor's office and told them I have to keep the light off because it's the fluorescence aggravate me. You have to move that clock because it's too loud. You cannot have that scent here. I need that bottle of disinfectant out of the room. Are you wearing perfume? Because I'm out of here. I can't be in the same room as you. So it seems to me like these are pretty straightforward things to have in order to create that safe environment for patients, but it's not common knowledge still within the health care providers. Now, in
Uh,
your
oh,
practice,
yes,
I we're
yes.
lucky that
Yeah,
you
I was
have
just gonna.
someone like you that is not just aware of all of these things, but who has an open conversation with the patients about how can I make that space safer. So it's also up to patients to have that conversation with the doctors. But it's also an advantage that now you also offer services online so that we can eliminate a lot of these potential triggers that happen in person.
It's true. Yes,
Mhm.
it's absolutely that is absolutely true. You know, although I know that some people still want that open connection in, you know, in an office setting. You know, what I will say is that when I did have the office, I took out all the fluorescent lights, and I had little lamps that had just a little the light bulb, you know, not the LED light bulbs, but just the old style light bulbs, very warm color, very soft. Yeah, we did, you know, we thought about a lot of things uh so that and of course, if people even how where, you know, where people wanted to place their feet,
Mhm.
some I had multiple cushions, if people sometimes people felt safer, right, if they could pile the cushions on them for whatever their reasons, right? And so there were as many options as we could. But yes, having the conversation and recognizing where the physiology was, very, very important. And I think it's a challenge, actually. So what I find in trying to introduce SRT process for people is that we've been so trained, almost conditioned. We've been conditioned to not be that aware of sensations unless they we're hurting, right? It's painful. It's some sort of that then or a panic attack. So the extreme of an activation we recognize, but what we don't recognize is when there are moments of comfort or ease, or even looking for those, and then how that registers in the nervous system in the body. And so a lot of people will have a bit of a challenge at first, because they're expecting only, you know, to logically think about something, and you know, and trying to draw them into going, okay, you know what, just let's check in and see how comfortable is the seat that you're sitting in, you
Actually,
know, what is your back like? Yeah.
yeah, talking about this brings something up to my mind about what is the definition of trauma, because often we talk ourselves into thinking, well, this wasn't that bad. I'm not traumatized by it. It's micro trauma, maybe, but not, I'm not traumatized by it. And in the meantime, we're not aware that our bodies are getting imprinted with notion of, no, that was a dangerous situation and we are in overdrive right now because of it, even if you're thinking that it's okay. So how would you define trauma?
Okay. So
Without
yeah.
having a whole, 12
Yeah,
hour course on it.
keep it simple. Yeah, yeah. So to really keep it simple, right? Trauma is, and remember, it's a trauma process that gets set into the autonomic nervous system. So it's the nervous system's experience, right? So, but it is an experience that happens too fast. So there's something shocking. So it happens, there's too much, right? Too much, too fast, too soon, right? And so, and the person doesn't feel able to negotiate out of it. Like we can't get, so, like that, the car hits you from behind, like you weren't able, and then, and oftentimes there'll be some shaking and, what happens is people don't allow the shaking through. That's what that animal, why zebras don't get ulcers is because we have to learn how to allow for that shaking, as uncomfortable as it is to allow it to move through our systems so that then the container that can manage the amount of dysregulation in the system, it doesn't get overwhelmed by that experience, right? And so but people are not aware, and not only that, but it doesn't have to be what we logically think as life threatening.
Hmm.
It is simply that the system perceives the experience, right? And usually it's like, you know, you hold your breath and you can't catch it and your heart's racing and all that. That's enough. There it is. That's an experience. And so helping yourself recognize when you are okay. So maybe it is when you get home, right? And you get home and you are able to sit, maybe have a glass of water, right? Where you are able to recognize all the experience on the inside that tells you breathing is okay again. Okay, and this was, right, my arms or whatever. Okay, that they're not shaking anymore. I'll give you an experience. I'll give you one of my experiences. So I was hit as a pedestrian on a crosswalk.
Oh, that's awful.
And
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, yeah, that
That's
was
that's
about 10
traumatic.
years ago or so. Yeah. And and I had my dog at the time too, and the dog took off just before the hit happened. She right, she had that faster instinct anyway. And of course I was, you know, it was a crosswalk, it was safe, there was a red light, and the person had gone through a stop sign and through the red light. Anyway, so I got knocked down and hit on my leg and then flew onto the dash, and and the experience of it was almost like slow motion, and hit on the, and then fell to, and then you hit the ground, you hit the pavement, and so they're in that slow motion. But I can remember my first thought to myself was, oh, I didn't hit my head.
Oh my goodness.
And that was my first thing. Oh, I didn't hit my head. And so, and of course everything is like, and you're tense and you're right. And people came out to help me, and and I think the next thing that I noticed, so because I had some SRT training already, right? And the next thing I noticed was that I could stand up. Now, was it terribly painful? And yeah, and the one leg was, yes, but I could stand up and somebody helped me and I could make it. So that was the next part of like, okay, that part is kind of okay.
So you're kind of
um
assessing level by level what is happening here.
Level by level, just finding where the okayness is, and trying to recognize that, right? But um and then the ambulance came and taken, and anyway, and so I had a torn muscle, a torn gastrocnemius, and my medial collateral ligament was torn, but luckily not my ACL. So I was thankful about that again. I was like, oh, it's not the ACL, okay. And no broken bones, right? And
Oh,
so, okay, so yep, none of that. So that was okay. And anyway, but was it
we
painful and all that?
and I'm sure it was really bad, horrible experience, but we all want to know what happened to the dog.
Oh yeah. So so I contacted my friend right away, and I'm like, Aisha took off. My dog's name's Aisha. I don't know where she is, and so she and then there were a couple of people that were around, and they were noticing she was looking for something. Can we help? It's a dog, so looking for the dog. Luckily, and so Aisha had taken off, had run and run and run. We couldn't find her, but she was picked up because she had her little tattoo in her ear, and she was taken back to the. So I got her from the SPCA,
Oh,
and she
thank
was taken
goodness.
back there, and luckily we could pick her up. And then I went to Lynn Zettel and Dr. Ed Josephs. They were here in town, and I did some SRT with them around that accident. And so I will tell you, it is the most bizarre experience. So I'll try to give you, I don't know if that's important, but I will give you what I remember as. So as I'm going through and I'm trying to track my nervous system, and I feel this pulsing and stuff in my knee, and then all of a sudden my head starts to want to, like, kind of like, I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but it's trying to, like, it's like, and my eyes, and they're twitching, and they're trying to look.
And they're
This
trying
is
to
where the
look
car hit
like
me.
towards left?
Where, yeah, yeah, they're looking to where the car hit me. and
Oh.
and all of a sudden I'm, and then and lots of big breathing. And all right, and I let it's kind of like letting your system do it, because it has a wisdom, right? And so, well, at least that's what I was trained in, and I understood that, right? And so and then he, kind of tracking with me and saying, where else do you feel, right? Just feel where you're steady, where, right, and breathing, tracking my breathing. And then my head started to, and with my eyes going this way, and my head was trying to turn this way. It was trying to get away, but it was thwarted.
Oh, that's interesting. So first
So
to the left, then to the right.
yeah,
Is it
because it's like looking, it's like it's trying to renegotiate the event, right? The autonomic is trying to because what we don't realize is, in a split instant, we do that. We do this and try to get away, but we don't recognize it, right? It's not clear, but the autonomic does. And so
Mhm.
as we're moving through and letting that shock experience happen, I was like trying to find that car. I couldn't see it fast enough, right? Like, that was what's in the system saying you didn't see it fast enough, and then you didn't pull away fast enough because I couldn't. And so, yeah, so I did that work. But the interesting thing is, and I did some of the leg and I did some of the shoulder, but I never did my back. And so I didn't realize it until like 3 years later. I'm trying to do some workouts, I'm trying to lift some weights. And why is one side weaker than the other? And right. And so the person who's helping me with this, she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? It's not like there's any muscle wasting or anything, right? And I'm like, I don't, like, what? And then and so it still didn't click in until from that time I kept getting, my back would go out, and everybody like, oh, that's with age and age and age, my back goes out, right? And go to the physio, go to the chiro, click click clack crack, and then a few months later back out again. And I'm like, my core, I've done exercise of core, that's strong, that's like, what's going on? And then, so then what happened was, I had an office near where a lady did acupuncture, and I was meant to see a patient, and my back went out. And talk about pain. So I'm like taking the naproxen and the thing because I got it. I can't cancel. So I
Mm-hmm.
go to see her, and we do the session. Uh, and then the acupuncturist comes in, and she puts, needle in my ear, right? And she's like, whoa. And on the one side, she can't even get the needle in the ear. She goes, whoa, there's lots of inflammation going on. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then finally she did a couple in the back. And then about an hour later, so this is the interesting how it's held in the system in such a strange way that we don't realize. About an hour later, my friend was coming to pick me up because I couldn't walk. I still couldn't walk very far, right? And so I'm like, oh, I can't walk those 2 blocks home
Oh,
yet.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I get into the car, and I'm like, oh, I'm shaking and like a fever. I'm like, have I got like suddenly I feel like I've got a fever, oh, and I'm shaking. If I got a cold coming on, right? And then it clicks, and I'm like, oh yeah,
You transformed into a
oh,
zebra.
oh, yes, I never did the back thing, and so
Mm.
all of that
That
held, right,
shaking.
activation and shaking, and I knew how to just track it. So I let it through, and I just tracked my hand. I was shaking all over my whole, and almost the breathing and everything. And I tracked that in my hand, and it was shaking, and I knew what it was. And I'm like, I got to discharge it. I got to discharge it. It's going to be so about 15, 20 minutes settled. But man, did I have to go to bed. I was
Oh,
exhausted.
yes.
But,
Yes.
but from then on, my back didn't go out like that anymore. And it was
Uh-huh.
interesting. So I tried to tell the acupuncture lady, right? I tried to tell her, I go, you need to help your patients recognize that some of what you do is going to release some of the trauma that's in their system, but we need to work together so that they can understand, because most people will lock that down. Right? Who wants to go through all that shaking as if and it was like you had like almost like a fever, where you get that cold shaking experience? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People would think
Mm-hmm.
that they were being sick, and they would have shut it down. Anyway, so that's part of the process, right? Only that, or that was my process anyway. But
Right, right,
yeah,
right. But the shaking is that's why I joked that you were becoming a zebra because finally it was
yeah,
coming out of your system, like what you were referring to
like
earlier,
yes,
and then the
yes,
exhaustion that you felt afterwards. It confirms why I'm completely exhausted after we do our session together, and I have to go and sleep because
yes,
it's not it's the body that needs to sleep and process everything and really
yes,
lock in that relaxation. That's how I feel
yes.
that my body is doing
Yes,
what it's
right,
doing.
because we're right, because now what we're doing is we're interrupting that pattern, and now we've just switched, and now we've allowed for that ventral vagus experience to come in, and so we're now going to allow the connection of the neural circuitry moving in that direction for that experience, right? And so yeah, so we're doing micro in a strange way, we're sort of doing microsurgery. And so it's exhausting at times, and you need a rest.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you mentioned ventral vagus a couple of times, and I know we've talked about it. So I just realized possibly probably people listening are probably wondering what is this
Ah, okay.
ventral vagal
So
system?
for sure, for sure. Yes. I'm glad that you're asking that, because that's a big part of but the teaching that people need to understand. So the autonomic nervous system is divided into two main um I guess groups of neurons. One's called the parasympathetic, and one's called the sympathetic. And most of us are very familiar with the sympathetic, because that's the right, especially when it goes into overactivation, heart races, all of the sweating, like all of these things that happen that are extremely uncomfortable for us, and are scary, right? It can also be vomiting. Like a lot of people will go into such an extreme of overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system. They think they're sick, and it's not. It's that it's gone into their gut process, and they're doing that. So it's all of those. Um, so now the parasympathetic, there's two components in the parasympathetic. So one is the dorsal vagus, and one is the ventral vagus. And so the origin of the neuronal pathways are in different areas of the brainstem. So one lies more back dorsally, and one comes more ventrally, so more forward. And they operate differently. And so this is what we mean by the polyvagal theory. It's actually, no, it's not really, it's not theoretical. It's actually
It's there.
clinically uh, there.
Mm-hmm.
so but the
And just to, if
dorsal vagus.
I'm just going to
Go
like
ahead.
quickly say that the when we talk about vagal anything, it's the vagus nerve, right? The one that goes from the brain all the way down into the belly and then back up, and it has that kind of like this loop that it does, which is why we've got the dorsal and the frontal aspect of the vagal nerve, correct?
Right. Yeah.
In very
It's
post-concussed language.
in a crude way. Yeah. So it's not a singular. It's not a singular nerve, right? But it
Mhm.
has two. So it has two different functions depending on the origin of it. So the dorsal vagal is the shutdown mode. So when the sympathetic activation is just too much, like so overwhelming, the system has to do just a shutdown. And so a lot of people don't realize that even depression is really engaging more dorsal vagus.
Oh my goodness.
So they,
Okay.
uh-huh. So because it's a shutdown. There's numbness, there's right. So there's a lack, like oftentimes there's a loss of that's where you get dissociation, where you can have dissociative events, and they don't have to be extreme. It could just be that y- you were thinking of something, and now it's an hour later, and you
Mm.
don't know where the time went. You like it's gone. Or people, and I think that's what that lady who hit me, she was in a dorsal event. She was completely not present in all of the warning. She
Right.
was not present, right? And so it's not as it's not as extreme. And in fact, people tend to go, and psychiatry tends to numb people, right? They try to block people's experience of certain emotions and presence. And people look for that as if it's the better way. Well, I don't have, I don't really feel those symptoms anymore. And I feel right. However, that dissociative state, that going into dorsal vagus, is a higher cortisol than the high sympathetic, right? Than the sympathetic process. So it's
Oh.
actually hard, it's harder on the system, only we don't recognize it because we're numbed out. So often people, right, or they'll lose track of time. They won't really feel, we call it alexithymic, where they don't really have any, they don't have any strong feelings. I don't really feel much. They'll talk that way. Yeah. And so that's the dorsal vagus. So we don't want much dorsal. It's there for an extreme situation, but we don't want to stay there. We don't want to use it,
Mm-hmm.
very often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the ventral vagus is where there's safety, where the physiology comes back into, regulated heart rate, right? Blood pressure, your diaphragm is moving, you have deeper breaths, the airflow, your digestive system functions well. You can find balance when you're in your ventral vagus. In fact, sometimes with kids who are dysregulated, and this again into ADHD and all of that, which is dysregulation in the system too, often get them to use the balance ball so that get them on the balance ball and help them go into more ventral vagus, and help them regulate little by little, right? So if they want to do their homework, we get them on there, and they're constantly trying to find their balance. And as they find their balance, they're able to focus a little better. And it takes a bit of time. It's new neural circuits, right? Developing. But yeah. So ventral vagus is all that good stuff, right? Oh, you feel relaxed, or oh, and it's the looking forward, and the right where you can notice, where you're in coolness or warmth
I
or
was just going
whatever
to
that's.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you because that's how we feel in cold water. Is that, I mean, the initial part is definitely sympathetic driven. It's definitely that initial shock that we breathe through. A lot of people ask me, "Oh, do you do the Wim Hof breathing?" And I'm like, no, I just walk into the water and I concentrate on my exhale. It takes 3 breaths and then I'm good to go. But that initial foot in the water, you got water up to your waist, it could still be a little bracing. And then, yeah, we get used to it. So that sympathetic activation gets followed by the parasympathetic activation, which is kind of counterintuitive because I would never have thought that I would be relaxing in the water and finding that centeredness and exactly what you're talking about there from the frontal ventral. My God,
Yeah, from the
me and
ventral
my
vagus.
words.
Yeah, yeah, and
Ventral
again, that brings.
vagal.
Yes, 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 exactly. And it's self-regulation is really not that we don't get activated, but that we have it's got a, back and forth, right? Oh, and there's a little bit of activation. Ah, there's a nice activation. It's nice, so we're able to return to that state. And so, yes, and again, it may not be for everybody. Maybe some systems learn how to respond, or maybe they give themselves enough time to be able to enter the cold water, see how they adjust. And not only that, but if after we do it, right? So once we're in there and something else gets relieved, so something else that's been really scary for us or threatening or we're really, and that gets relieved, then it now starts to translate into a resource where then we're going to engage that ventral vagus even more because now it's become a resource. So, yeah. And, certain music, again, certain sounds, right? And being very aware of that. And people, although sometimes people are a hit and miss, they're a little bit of something, they can have their moments where they're really awesome. And then all of a sudden they do this thing and you're like, ooh.
Yes,
So,
yes.
you know, yeah, pets are
And
usually,
I was going to say animals. Animals are the
yeah,
solution here.
yeah. I have a person in my practice who heavily, heavily, heavily early developmental trauma, very lots of abuse. And this person rescues animals. And this person knows how to find and then helps them, but finds them safer to be with.
Hmm.
Makes sense, right? Yeah.
So there are many ways then to activate this ventral vagal activate to activate the
Yes.
activation, but to activate it. So there's for us, for my whole group there that I'm swimming with, it would be the cold
Yes.
water or just
Yes.
open water swimming even. And I
Yes.
think it's actually part of the blue therapy and green therapy, actually. Anyone going out in nature, looking at mountains or flowing water could have this ventral vagal activation, or pets,
Yes.
or what music you mentioned.
Yes.
What other activities would yoga
Dancing.
maybe or
Yeah.
movement?
Dancing. Yeah. Now, in that, so what happens is, so we enjoy anything that we truly get enjoyment. Not video games. No, no, no. That's dissociation. That's not it.
Okay,
That's
good to
all
know.
distraction stuff. Yeah, no, that's not it, right? Um, but anything that we truly enjoy, where there's like a fullness, that we feel a fullness, almost like the breaths are deeper. And, that can usually signal to us that that is a ventral vagus experience for us. Now, what people don't usually do is that they go to nature. So, for example, if they love the greens, going just like I do, love hiking, love being in the woods. But what we don't do, which is the thing about the conditioning, is we don't embody the experience as we're having it. So as we're walking, so we can walk. Oh, there's smells, right? In the springtime, there's certain smells, or if they've got the wood chips, the certain, if you're walking in that kind of hike, you can smell it. Oh, and how the different lighting from the leaves, and there's different ones and how they overlap or they don't, and then you see how the light comes through, and then you turn your attention into what do you notice?
Mm.
What do you notice about that? Right? And so shoulders, breathing, right? There's a steadiness and an ease. And so it's really about that, right? It's because then that truly becomes a resource, because now we're embodying, we're bringing our attention to the experience, the inside experience, the physiology, the sensations that are going on while we're having it. And sometimes we can often feel there's a lightness that we, people use different words. There's all different words to have that experience of, oh, I feel, as I was saying, full. Oh, it's like so full in here, or, oh, there's some warmth, or, yeah. And
Right.
so that's really the key for people. If that's could be the take home message, is to start to spend time. So we're really good at looking at when things are when they're in the sympathetic stage and they're not okay. But what we're not used to is when they are okay. And those moments where, and they don't have to be big moments, but it's being able to recognize that. Right. So even if it is somebody that I worked with and he liked having his cup of coffee. And so that's all we did for a while to really register that as a resource. He'd hold the mug. What did that feel like? The smell. And then what did that start to translate on the inside in terms of other sensations for him? So everybody does it. It's different for everybody. But it's paying attention to what you enjoy or you look forward to.
And if I hear you right, it's paying attention to all the different sensations in our
Yeah.
body,
Yes.
or that we feel on the body, right? Like
Yes.
walking in the forest, sometimes
Yes.
it's spongy, so it's not in the body, but
Yes.
it's what we feel there, or the
Yes.
temperature of the air. But this is
Yes.
kind of the door to SRT, the
Yes.
self-regulation techniques and
Absolutely.
therapy, right? So that
Absolutely.
if we are more aware of our sensations in these moments, then we can then apply the therapy, the SRT, to other events that are happening within our lives, to us, that we create for ourselves, whatever happens, right? But
Yes.
then
Yes.
it's easier to work in SRT when we're not starting at ground zero of totally being disconnected from or disembodied from ourselves, that we have that we already have one step awareness of, I feel these things and I sense these things when I'm in the forest or in the
Yeah.
water.
That's it. That's it. And not only that, but the more sensitive you get, the more that you're able to recognize this, then you start to recognize when it starts to move out of it.
Mm.
When you start to like, oh, like it's a little bit too much. All of a sudden, instead of that nice deep breath, or for some people in my practice, they speak quickly, and they speak faster when they're talking about something that's a little bit threatening or is bothering them, and it gets even faster. And so bringing their attention to kind of going, okay, what do you notice? And it's just about being curious. There's no judgment. There's no right. It's not right or wrong. It's just, oh, oh, my chest. Yeah, your chest. What else? Was I speaking faster? Yeah, it sounded like it, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
and maybe the stomach was in a knot, and maybe the
And the
shoulders were
stomach,
raised a little bit.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly, right? And it's not wrong. It's just we're trying to interrupt the pattern so that whenever whatever that event was, we're going to be able to move through it, and it doesn't have to have that same impact on our nervous system anymore. And we are tremendously resilient. And doesn't matter how much or nuh-uh. If the person really wants to, I have seen so many incredible situations, so many people that shouldn't be flourishing and are doing quite well. And so incredible resilience that we have within us. We are brilliantly designed.
What a beautiful way to end this talk for now, because I think we're going to have you back. But I just
Okay,
don't want to extend, but I know that you've got many things to do, and I want to respect your time. Um,
thank you.
so i- just just to finish it off with SRT. So you have all of these techniques and tools, and you've been trained in SRT. And how can people find you? And if you're not available to them for whatever reason, how can they find someone with such resources and tools to offer them?
Yeah, I think so it used to be, so the center, so it was cftre.com used to be the website for SRT, and you would be able to find the therapists that have that training. So there are a number of therapists that do have that training, and they used to have that used to be a website. I didn't actually, that was one thing I didn't check to see. I haven't been on it for a while. But that was their website. Dr. Lynn Zettel and Dr. Ed Josephs, that was their website. And there was a link to then all the therapists that have had that training. So there are more people that have that training. Now to contact me, it's really just through, because the website process is a little bit, it's not following what I want to, so I'm not steady with that. But if they want, they can email me,
All right.
and
So
they
what
can email. Yeah, you
I'll
can.
have your
They can email.
email address in the show
Yeah,
notes so that people can reach
yeah,
you at your email address
for
then.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
that's great.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Dr. Noor, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
for
Thank you
your
for this
time.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I learned so many things. I apologize for my poor lack of vocabulary, but like I said at the
Oh,
beginning, that's
no,
actually part of a brain injury. It's not finding the right words at the right time. And here we are.
that's beautiful. No, thank you so much. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
And so if anyone is listening and they have a brain injury and they're thinking, I can't even follow a conversation. And well, see, this is what happens. You get me like this, a podcast host who can't find her words. Great. It happens to the best of us. That's all I keep thinking. We have to give ourselves some grace in all of this.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and hopefully, Dr. Noor, hopefully your coolest journey will resonate with many of our listeners so that people know where to go, and that there are also many different ways that they can get
Yes,
therapy to get better and to heal
yes,
themselves, right? So I want to
absolutely.
remind the listeners that they're listening to The Coolest Journey with me, Hélène Caron, as the host. If you enjoyed the show, please show your support by subscribing to The Coolest Journey newsletter via the website, thecoolestjourney.com. And you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. You can listen live on radio at cfmu.ca. The shows are broadcasted live on Fridays from 12:30 to 1 Eastern Time, which is 9:30 to 10 Pacific Time. And you can also connect with me on Facebook and Instagram. Dr. Noor, thank you once more.
You're welcome.
And
My pleasure.
happy Friday, everyone, and wishing you all health, energy, and the coolest journey of your life. Bye.